negro y todos me señalaron. Dijeron igualdad, pero esta vez me separaron. Dijeron mucho, pero no se olvidaron de callarse. Cuánto odio por mi piel sembraron. Dijeron historia y la tergiversaron. Dijeron guerra, muerte, odio y nos culparon. Siempre. Enfermedades, epidemias nos contagiaron. Exterminación de mi fauna complace a tus mercados. Dijeron riqueza y todos se lo robaron. Oro, platino, diamante, a la fuerza se lo llevaron. Y la actualidad es tan triste que todo aquello que dijeron es lo mismo que hoy se dice más. ¿Quién dice? ¿Quién explota? ¿Quién se beneficia? El asesino, el mismo que da las noticias. Hay una cuenta fácil que siempre me da las grandes riquezas, de dónde vienen y hacia dónde van.
Independiente como los Mao Mao, concluyente como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao. Somos resistentes como los Mao Mao, independiente como los Mao Mao, concluyente como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao. Somos resistentes como los Mao Mao. Nati Dre es afroresistencia, cultura ancestral, afrodescendencia, solidaridad. Esa es la esencia, la diáspora africana eleva la conciencia, conciencia negra, universal, progresista y transcultural. Negros y mestizos revolucionando, pueblos caribeños y africanos en un solo bando. No más explotación, colonialismo interno, no más confusión, supremacía blanca en el Babilón. Soy rojo, negro y verde, afroliberación. Mientras más negro, más represión. Somos creadores, recupera tu visión. Mi misión es educar con amor, contra el silencio, vivo sin temor. Independiente como los Mao Mao, concluyente como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao. Somos resistentes como los Mao Mao, independiente como los Mao Mao, concluyente como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao. Somos resistentes como los Mao Mao.
What's happening? What's happening? It is Rise Up TV. You know what we do around here. Rise Up TV. Is it Rise Up TV? It's the Rise Up Morning Show. What's up with that, man?
Rise Up TV, it should be.
Rise Up TV sound good. What y'all think? It sound all right?
Rise Up TV.
Okay.
Rise Up.
Sound like we you know, I'm feeling that. What you think? We gotta ask Boona, because Boona's the boss and whatnot. Sir Boona's our resident African. He told us he's the only brother on here from the continent. So we gotta ask him.
I never say that.
No.
I was the only one who was born on the continent. That's different.
Oh, okay,
right.
Okay. Now you want to be politically correct. But anyway. He come back, he like, it's all good. It wasn't me. Anyway.
And by the way, I never said I was from Senegal. Especially after the interview we had with Hamzat.
Hamzat let you know, huh?
look at him denouncing Senegal. Let me go Senegal. Let me my Senegalese neighbors. Boona, yeah, y'all know. Yeah, so but you about to get AWOL, man. So don't be claiming friends, brother. Never said I was from Senegal. Okay, cool. So check it out, man. Today is Friday, TGIF. You know what I'm saying? It's a great day for a revolution. It is August 9th. This is Black August. It's a very important day for many of us throughout the diaspora, because 10 years ago, a brother by the name of Michael Orlandis Darian Brown Jr. was murdered by a pig by the name of Darren Dean Wilson. Mike Brown Jr., as many of us know him as, was shot down in the streets of Ferguson, Missouri at age 18, about 8 days after he graduated from high school. So this man had just graduated from his school, and he was gunned down in the street by this cowardly cracker, Darren Wilson. It sparked an entire movement across the country, across the world, I dare say, because I know that brothers around the world was talking about Mike Brown, and clearly it sparked resistance, because you brothers living in the I was going to say in the custody of France, you knew about Mike Brown. So this brother, it is now the 10-year commemoration. Many of us traveled to Ferguson, Missouri, including myself. And, just keeping it 100, there are some great people in Ferguson, but there are a lot of opportunists that was out in those streets as well. You know what I mean? And we almost had to get with some of these opportunists because it was criminal to see how folks, just like the very nature of capitalism, how folks are like, many folks are like vultures. You know what I'm saying? They feed off the dead. You know, they're grave robbers, I call them. You know what I mean? Because as soon as someone dies, you ambulance chasing and you there to get fame off of their name. And I'm just going to say it just like that because that's exactly what it was. You know what I mean? So you have a whole lot of folks out there that exist. Many made their name off of Ferguson.
Yeah.
I recall a couple years ago, I was talking and this brother said, well, I ain't never heard of you. So that's cool. You know what I'm saying? I said, how long you been organizing? He said, shit, I've been organizing since Mike Brown was murdered. He said, how long you been organizing? I said, shit, I was organizing before Mike Brown's parents met. You understand what I'm saying? So I hear what you talking about. That sounds good, but in the real world, we're not chasing, we're not looking for a bag, as they say, while our people are being placed in body bags. So we remember Mike Brown today, 18-year-old Mike Brown, on this 10-year commemoration of his brutal murder, where he laid in the streets, lie in the streets for hours, you know, for hours as folks just passed by. So, you know, rising power to Mike Brown Jr. and stiff resistance. Yes, yes. How you brothers doing? Anybody talking? So the mic messed up.
Boona, they tracking you down, Boona.
Here you go. You said Boona with the francophone microphone there.
Oh, it was Kalanji then.
No, that was Kalanji's mic that was doing that. That sounded like a decoded message. I don't know if you guys heard of that.
That's the Atlanta microphones, man.
so
the Georgia mics. Dirty South.
So I got the young thug mic, huh? I see how y'all try to do me, man.
It is, man.
I'm getting railroaded.
Whenever there is anything wrong in those shows, it's always on my fault. I don't know why. Somebody else's mic is not working, it's always Boona's fault. Anyways.
I think these brothers are they're racist towards you, Boona. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was going to say.
You gotta get with him.
Fernando, the first thing he said, "Hey, Boona, that's your mic."
Who said that?
Fernando.
Oh, Fernando?
Yeah.
That's your brother. He been knowing you all that time. I know it probably was your mic, but Isaac got a thing for calling my mic out, so he just said it was my mic because he didn't want to, you know. They said them brothers in France are sensitive.
We
wanted to make sure. Huh?
We're losing you, man. We have
again.
Can you hear him well, Isaac?
1, 2. Can y'all hear me?
I can hear him.
Yeah, I can hear him well. This is gonna.
See, look at that. Now I see y'all set tripping. Let me grab my mic close. Can everybody hear me?
Damn, man. Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. All right. Anyway,
so that was just me who.
Yeah, the whole time it was you. The initial question was, how you brothers doing? And it went into all this other stuff. Y'all all right? Can y'all hear me still?
Yeah, we hear you.
Okay.
Yeah. You hear us?
Oh my God. I said, how y'all brothers doing?
We're trying to make sure your mic is good before we go off and start talking, okay?
My mic good or what?
Yeah, you're good, man.
Yeah, everything's good.
Right,
no, I'm feeling good, man. I'm feeling good. I'm excited because yesterday Vital Hoops made his first appearance over here on Black Power Media, right? So that's dope. I'm excited. Yeah, no doubt.
You had a dope guest too.
Yeah, man. Guest was good. Guest was good. Everything was smooth, man. And yeah, so we're gonna keep it going. Boona said he don't watch Vital Hoops, so
when did I say that?
It's like I just appear on it. I don't watch any of the other episodes.
Boona's episodes was dope. We got to get you back.
Only one episode that I told him I wouldn't watch it, but I'm not going to mention why. This is something that you can discuss privately.
Okay.
I'm scared to know, man. I don't even know how I got here, man. It's all good.
On the particular show, he's been attacking Fernando since then, which is funny,
I don't even understand y'all, man. I don't know what's going on here. But anyway, check out Vital Hoops, even though Boone over here hating. You know what I mean? Boone is on another platform as well. Shout out to that platform. We like the brother over there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
shout out.
We're gonna leave it at
shout
that.
out, but we're not gonna mention it. But shout out. Shout out to the Mayibuya podcast though. That's Buddha's podcast.
That's the
okay.
Mayibuya. Yeah.
That's on the Activist News Network.
Okay.
With Dr. Gerhorn. So it's a monthly series. So
okay.
Yeah, hopefully we can. Has been stopped for a while because he was doing some research in London. But hopefully by next month we'll be able to relaunch it again. We're actually having him on the show next week, if I'm not mistaken.
So on the 15th he'll be here live. So make sure y'all tune in to the Rise Up Morning Show. We have Dr. Gerald Horn in the building. I'm excited about that one. You know what I'm saying? Because I got caught in the crossfire with some other folks, and I wasn't even there. You know what I'm saying? you told you be getting blamed. Shit, I'm still getting blamed for shit. I ain't even on the other platform. They just like Kalanji did it. Like, what happened? Something happened 9 months ago. Kalanji did it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
but
it's like that.
It is. Yeah, man. It is what it is, man. But anyway, we're checking out the Rise Up Morning Show. We're gonna go to a quick break. We have a special guest to start the show off. Y'all stay tuned, and we're gonna wake these brothers up because they acting like they sleep over here, blaming it on my microphone. Rise Up Morning Show. We'll see you in a minute.
Rise up.
Rise up.
The white power structure, because that's all we have in America. And the white power structure today is just as much interested in perpetuating slavery as the white power structure was 100 years ago, only now they use modern methods of doing so. And realizing that the black people in this country are waking up and becoming filled with a desire to be looked upon as men and as human beings, the white power structure, to slow down that struggle for freedom and human dignity, uses tricks. 100 years ago they could do it with chains. Today they use tricks, and one of the tricks that they've invented is this token integration, to get Negro, so-called Negro leaders to accept a few token crumbs of integration that don't solve any problem for the masses of black people in this country whatsoever, but it does make the hand-picked Negroes be satisfied, to slow down the cry of the masses. And a good example of that is, as soon as the spirit of rebellion or revolution began to spread among the masses of black people in this country, and they began to take an active part, and they showed that they weren't confined to this nonviolent approach, then the government or the power structure began to sit up and take notice. And now, as you said earlier, the president is talking about new legislation and to put it, take it out of the streets and put it back in the courts. Why? As long as it's in the streets, it's in the hands of the masses of black people who will not compromise or who cannot be bought out. But when you put it back in the courts, then that puts it back into the hands of the hand-picked Negro leaders, who will allow the judges and the other persons that are involved in this white power structure to slow them down. It's only a trick. And as long as the masses of black people are involved in the struggle for freedom, not integration, but freedom, and respect as human beings, respect as men, and show that they're willing to die to be respected as men, then the power structure sits up and takes notice. But as long as this mass element is led, and when I say led, I use led in quotes, actually contained by Uncle Tom Negro leaders who hold them back, who tell them turn the other cheek, and things like that, then the white power structure isn't worried at all. They're only worried when they know that the masses of black people are ready to explode, and in exploding it will destroy some of the furniture in their house, and then they react accordingly.
What's happening? It's the Rise Up Morning Show. You know what I mean? Isaac stepped away for a second. You know what I mean? He felt intimidated by the Africans over here from France. They's like, look, man. They said take that Vegas stuff to the side and whatnot. So I was like, man, I said, you ain't got to run, Isaac. Isaac said, nah, I'm going to get back up. So he'll be back in a minute. Anyway, it's the Rise Up Morning Show. It is Friday. It's a great day for revolution. We have a guest coming on. We've been having guests on pretty frequently. If you missed yesterday's episode of Rise Up Morning Show, we paid honor to Dr. Mutulu Shakur and also Move. We had my man Mike Africa Jr. on from Move talking about what went on in 1978 as far as the assault on Move and also him being born in a prison cell. Shout out to my joking twin, Mike Africa Jr., you know what I mean, for that work. He has a powerful book out that folks need to get. It's called On the Move. And I guess this must be Philly weekend or something, because we had him from Philly, and we got another brother here from Philly. I guess it must be Philly Friday today. But anyway,
Philly's in the building, and Kemba's not even here. Philly's
in the building.
Not
here. He's somewhere hiding. I don't know. I think they might have took his Philly card. I'm not sure. But anyway, we have a brother that I've known for a while now, who is an educator out in the Philadelphia school system. He's a brave educator. He's a young brother, a father, loyal to the community. And, he was even brave enough to have me speak to the teachers in his district or in his city. And I was like, wow, this guy must don't like his job. But but he had me come through. I want to show love for our brother, Ismael Jimenez. What's going on, brother? How you feeling?
Doing good, brother. Good to be here.
Good to have you here, man. Yeah, sound like your voice got deeper since we last talked.
Yeah. No, I'm good.
Okay. You're like, go ahead on, Kalonji, chill. But anyway, man, we're definitely glad to have you on the Rise Up Morning Show. And we appreciate the work that you've been doing in Philadelphia. It definitely resonates. And now the globe knows about it. You know what I'm saying? Because, we're about to press that a little bit harder. But for folks who aren't familiar with you, if you don't mind, give us a bio about who you are and what is some of the current work that you're doing in Philadelphia.
Well, first thing I got to say is I consider myself a teacher, right? So I taught for about 12 years, over a decade in the school district of Philadelphia. In Philadelphia, we have a required African-American history class. I purposely chose to teach in Philadelphia because of that. But on top of that, right now, I'm currently the director of social studies for the whole school district of Philadelphia, which serves about 115,000 students, grades K through 12. So I provide guidance around curriculum and also professional development for teachers on how to teach it right, but also side hustle at the University of Pennsylvania in the Urban Teacher Apprentices Program. And I teach the social studies methods on there too. Basically just trying to teach teachers how to teach the youth in the real way and really challenge them on thinking about who they really are. So really that's primarily my work, but it feeds into many different things, as you know.
Word. So like what drove you, because I know you're very passionate about the education of African people and, yes, keeping it a buck, oftentimes, I mean, I taught myself up in Connecticut for 9 years, but, when you talk about educators, oftentimes if it's not an independent school, it kind of gets shaky when you're talking about teaching about who you are and what you are. I mean, I remember teaching in public school one time, man, and I was talking about Egypt, and I said Egypt was in Africa, and there was a white student teacher, and she said in front of the class, Egypt's not in Africa. Yep. I said, what do you mean Egypt is not in Africa? I said, where is it? She said it's in the Middle East, and she was very serious about it. So, and the students, they're looking at me now like she's white. If she says it, we like you. We like you, but you got on Timbs and hoodies and you black. And I don't know. This is a white woman. She knows where Egypt is. So, I mean, I thought that was beautiful because, as the good Lord would have it, I pulled down that map and I showed her where Egypt was. Yeah. And at that moment, I didn't even get mad at her. I'm like, this is who you have teaching our children. Yep. Expecting these white folks who don't even know geography to teach our children about our reality. So no wonder they're not talking about any type of what's that curriculum junk we're trying to keep us through. I want to know, what was your passion? What got you for going into that? What'd you say, brother?
Yeah, I said we didn't hear you well. There was an issue with your mic.
Yeah, your sound is like pushed back, Kalani.
I don't know if Ismael got the question, but
I did hear the question. So
Okay.
basically, like, why did I pursue, and what like motivates me to pursue, Africana studies, Black studies, right, as a vocal point, as an educator. And just like you, a lot of it was self-taught. Nobody taught me about Carter G. Woodson in school, or you know what I mean. Like, I never heard of James Baldwin until I was 27, and I love Black history, right? It was really a catalyst moment when I was in like a fourth grade at a majority white school, and I started stuttering, and the class laughed at me. And my teacher at the time was like, "Oh, don't laugh at him. His people talk like that." So like my parents heard about it and everything, made a big fuss. The teacher apologized, but the librarian at the school heard about it. And she's like, "I'm sorry that happened to you." And like, cause I was up in that library all the time. And she's like, "I want you to read this. I think it's important." And she slid me the copy of the autobiography of Malcolm X, man. And I read that joint in fourth grade, fifth grade. Yo, by the time fifth grade came around, all the little white kids around me would call me Ishmael X. Because I was on that type time. And so like, you know how people point to the moment that they recognized and woke up and like started switching up the game? Like for me, it's like, I just don't know when that happened. If anything, I forget sometimes and had to go back into what it's all about. So really that's what motivated me to become a teacher. I knew I wanted to become a teacher at 16. And I graduated high school with a 1.6 GPA. So like they telling me, "Oh, you sure you want to do that? You sure college is right for you? Why don't you think about this?" And I was like, "Nah, bro, I want to teach in Philadelphia. I'm going to go to community college. I want to," you know what I mean? So it was very clear for me at a young age, the path of education as really addressing the issue fundamentally, the existential question that we're all dealing with within this society in the wilderness in North America.
Yeah. Appreciate that answer.
Yeah.
We appreciate you for giving us the time, brother. Could you speak a little bit to some of the challenges you may have faced, speaking teaching in the public school system?
Well, yeah, man. It's real funny. There's like a lot of issues, right? Number one, people want like all the image that they're diverse and they're allowing multiple perspectives, but really at the end of the day, they don't want that smoke. So I've experienced things where teacher is like told the principal, "Oh, he has a 10-point program of the Black Panthers out of his classroom," and it's offensive. And I got called to the office and the principal's like, "Hey man, like, I understand what you're trying to do. I love what you're trying to do." He's like, "But do you mind just to like calm nerves to take it down?" So it's a lot of that. There's a lot of pushing the compromise in spaces. Right. So like, at the same time, I definitely don't try to compromise. And I'm actually even surprised that I'm at where I'm at right now because I didn't try to sugarcoat none of this. So they know what they're getting. And if I get fired, it's like, y'all know what you got when you brought me on. Y'all, I've been doing this work for a long amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Sorry about that. So I do have a question, actually 2 questions for Ismael X, right? Yeah, you've talked about Malcolm X, and obviously he's one of the most important, I would say, African educators of the 20th century. So, in the, I believe it was in the charter of the Organization of Afro-American Unity, you said that education is the passport to our future. Education is our passport to the future, for tomorrow belongs to those who prepared for today. So I wanted to know, the influence of Malcolm X on your own intellectual growth and also on your career as a teacher, and also how, in terms of reception, how have people reacted to, the teaching of Malcolm X that you have tried to convey throughout your career?
Well, one of the benefits of being in Philadelphia, Malcolm X is highly respected. His first temple was here in Philadelphia. So there's like an element that says, you're not going to disrespect Malcolm's name, right? So I benefit from that, right? So like all the, veteran Black educators, especially Black women educators, they want this type of education for our children. And I taught at some of the schools that most people would never go to. And I stayed there for, one school closed on me. and I had to be sent to another school, and I ended up in Kensington of all places. And if anybody's familiar with Philadelphia, man, and if you ain't familiar with Philadelphia, Google Kensington. This place is no joke. And I taught there for 8 years, and those children love learning about Malcolm, not only his legacy and what he became, but also what it meant to actually engage intellectually on what the condition in the current context is, while also looking at how Malcolm did that when he was alive. I think some people drop the ball and forget that Malcolm was a voracious reader. He was reading and soaking up everything, international newspapers, books, ideas, concepts. He was bringing it all together, right? And so when you think of that, that's the model that we need to be extending to our children. And our children are capable, wanting to do that, and willing. And so knowing that from jump, man, it was just like, it really went easy in that regard in the classroom. The only difficulties I dealt with were problematic, other folks who thought that I was making the kids too angry. But that never really became an issue, because I can run circles around them folks when it came to the classroom and teaching the kids, and the kids knew it, and the other teachers kind of knew it. So it's like, all right, whatever, you can talk whatever you want, but really at the end of the day, man, I'm doing right by these children. What about you?
Yeah.
Isaac, you have anything you want to, any questions you want to ask? I know you just hopped back.
Yeah, Boona took my Malcolm X question out, and I wanted to ask, man.
Let me jump in real quick about Malcolm, man, just
yeah,
to keep it on the Malcolm real quick.
Yeah.
Because I hear a lot. Like I think I was speaking about this yesterday with Kalanji, by the way, like how a lot of people, they talk about Malcolm, or they say they mention Malcolm, but they don't really know what Malcolm was about, like his ideology and what he really stood for. So have you had that experience a lot with like certain students that you may like really help them like discover Malcolm as he truly was, and like sometimes they might be surprised or not really understanding what Malcolm was really about? Do you have that a lot?
Oh, of course. I mean, the way Malcolm is presented into the narrative is that Malcolm is like the opposite of Martin Luther King, and Martin Luther King's Santa Claus. You know what I mean? And our children are like literally pumped this idea that he's just like violent. He represents violence. And so when they really see the human element, really see the fact that he was, a product of two parents who were hardcore Garveyites, right? Who were like, made their own way. And despite that, still couldn't survive in the pressures of the system, and how Malcolm even navigated that. When they see those nuances, it opened their eyes to be like, wow, man, I never knew this about him. He's like, why isn't there a Malcolm X Day? Sometimes kids start asking that. I was like, they have a Martin Luther King Day. Look what they did to that man. And I think it really speaks to the fact that our children are being miseducated when it comes to the legacy of our heroes. Not even just our heroes, but our intellectual genealogy. You know what I mean? You can't talk about Malcolm. You can't talk about Black Power. You can't talk about any of that without Marcus Garvey. But you also can't talk about Marcus Garvey without Booker T. Then that conversation gets real messy. But see, like knowing the messiness of it and the traditions that flow from it really informs me, like, oh, so I can be part of this, even if I disagree here and agree here and think this and think that. And really, at the end of the day, I think a lot of students took that away from the course.
That's dope, man.
Fernando, is it a Malcolm book that I can see in your bookshelf? Top right? Malcolm X talks to young people, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, Malcolm X talks to young people. I got that one in Cuba, man.
That's a very important book.
Yeah, that is a good one. Yeah, that is a good one.
And I definitely want to uplift I've done book clubs with teachers, right? One of the books that really resonates with a lot of folks is Malcolm in America by James Cone.
Oh, that's an excellent book.
And it hits heavy because like there's this elder, I wouldn't call her an elder, more of like somebody who never really got involved in like Black history and everything, came to the book club, and she always now calls me her first Black teacher because that put her on the thinking of things even larger. Now she's part of like, Dr. Carr's, podcast and group and stuff, and that what they doing, and also organizing within the community, right? Because at the end of the day, we could talk all this we want. We need people on the street dedicated for a deeper reason. And I think Malcolm does that, has that power with people if they really truly understand his legacy.
Sure.
That is, that's powerful, man. I think Isaac has a question. I'll get back to what I was going to say.
Yeah, and I just had a question in regards to how you are preparing for potentially the wake of, well, I mean, for those who think that Project 2025 is coming in 2025, it's already started. They've already laid out a lot of what's in that, you know, a lot of what that book talks about. If you can, just for the viewers, explain how you as an individual who works directly opposed to that, how you're working to, you know, prepare not just yourself but also the students for what is considered to be one of the most, like, a mass indoctrination of history, mass erasure, you know, which intrinsically works hand in hand with with the system. So
Well, first thing I got to say, we got to be honest. That's happening in most classrooms. This idea that folks is actually teaching our children the truth, I mean, that's a mythology within itself, and they're actually using that to push back, right? Like, oh, they're teaching their children to hate white people and America and all this nonsense. And quite frankly, no, that's not happening. And so the way I'm thinking of it is, I don't know if folks are familiar with Dr. Jarvis Given's book, Fugitive Pedagogy, right? Again, it speaks to the intellectual genealogy in which I view myself derived from. Our folks have always operated fugitively when it came to education, right? These folks never really wanted us truly educated, and we always had to create them spaces. So that's really what I'm working with. I'm trying to work with as many partners as possible to actually embed kind of real history that challenges folks to critically think, right? And then also push back on the narrative that this is indoctrinating, right? In the flip round, y'all are indoctrinating our children. All we're trying to do is ask folks to think critically and draw their own conclusions. So, you know, we have emphasized dialectical thinking within our instructional practices when it comes to social studies teachers. We also have a required African-American history course that if them folks from National want to take it away, Philadelphia will be up in arms, bro. Like, that's something people fought for and bled for. So, like, it's just like, you know, the devil's getting their army together, so are we. And I'm very clear on that. And whatever the outcome is, I know that our ancestors have dealt with so much worse, and our folks are still dealing with so much worse that, you know, we're even blessed to be in a situation where I'm even to speak on this right now, even if I do get in trouble about talking about it. I'll just be one of many people that should be getting in trouble. You feel me?
No doubt. I know you have about 5 minutes with us. You know what I'm saying? We're clear. We're watching the time. I want to ask you a two-part question real quick, because you just said something that triggered and sparked the next question. And that was, you were saying, regardless of if you get in trouble. I want you to tell us about the Africana Studies lecture series. And we understand that you recently had some pushback and resistance in regards to it. So if you can tell us about the series, and also you know, what that pushback looked like.
Yeah. So as soon as I you know, came out the classroom, when I took a position as a social studies coordinator, I was like, we need to have some type of like monthly series to expose teachers to different ideas, especially around Africana studies, because it's a required course here, and it's not required that anybody has any background knowledge about Black history, right? So you have a bunch of people teaching Black history whose deepest knowledge about Black history in Philadelphia is like Meek Mills and the Jeffersons, right? So you turn around and you have to deal with that. I made the case effectively. No, let's have a monthly series where we bring in scholars and different thinkers from different varying angles to expose folks to ideas that would actually influence their practice. So we did that the first year. The second year, brother, you were part of it the second year. This past year was the third year. And we really wanted to get down and really allow folks to kind of make judgment of themselves around these ideas. And so one of the things that has come out of this, obviously, is we got deep. You know, Wise Intelligent was on that, John. You know, Wise Intelligent goes in. You know, we've had folks, you know, that have really spoke truth, and nothing has happened until recently. What has happened over the past year, obviously, due to geopolitical things out of my control, there's extra attention paid to what exactly folks should and should not be saying. And so not only do I bring in top scholars around the country to be involved in the Africana Studies lecture and workshop series, but I also tap teachers who I know are the dopest African-American history teachers in Philadelphia. Well, one of those teachers, folks felt that shouldn't be doing that because of her political stance when it comes to some geopolitical question that's happening in the world. And I'm like, I'm not canceling one of our best teachers because some folks are upset because she's critical of the decisions of a state. I don't even cape for the US government like that. So I refused, I was even like threatened a little bit, but I also at the end of the day, it still went through. And, that led to some stuff. So the following month, we had the last one for the year. We had Dr. David Stovall and Dr. Goldie Muhammad as the keynotes, and they dropped something about the geopolitical issue. And they're trying to tie me into that issue now, saying that I am allowing these things to run rampant within the school district of Philadelphia, which is just a bunch of nonsense because, as you know, the Africana Studies lecture and workshop series, we talk about Africana Studies, y'all. We talking about humanity. And if folks can't deal with that, then I don't know what to tell them. And at the end of the day, that my integrity means much more than caping in order to keep a job because folks want me to be afraid of something.
Brother, we definitely appreciate you coming on. Of course, we got to get you back on because the time was really limited.
I know, bro. I'm sorry about that. I'm sorry.
Nah. It ain't.
If you come back on, it's all good. If you come back on,
of course, bro. Of course.
Yeah. We not gonna. That was Fernando's way of telling you, like, okay, we're gonna give you another chance. You don't come back on, we're gonna talk bad about you.
Yes, sir.
Especially since Ikemba brought you on, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Ikemba's notorious.
Yeah, definitely throw him under the bus, bro. No,
Quick,
that's the brother. That's the brother right there.
Hey man, we got his arms and legs now. Boona in the back. You got him, Boona? Okay, cool. we're gonna twirl him. But yeah, brother, we definitely appreciate what you're doing in this system. Like I said, I was honored to join you on it because oftentimes the work we do, not too many people are brave enough to call on certain types of people if they're not accepted by the state. I'm gonna just put it blunt, because many of these folks who are in Black academics and who consider themselves revolutionaries, they're really co-signing for the state, and you can see how they move, but to the naked eye you won't see it. But anyway, know you have to run, brother. Be safe. Stay on the right side of barricades until next time.
Yes, sir. Appreciate y'all.
No doubt. Salute. There was our brother Ismael Jimenez out there banging on the Philadelphia school system. He's had some powerful people, on board, to as he moved this and navigated this situation around. So we kind of touched on the tip, you know what I'm saying, on the base of it. But at the same time, this is he is a sincere brother, and salute to Ikemba. We always, I don't know if we giving him problems, but I just say me. You know what I'm saying? But he's on point, and we appreciate that he brought the comrade on. The beauty for me is to be able to be invited on different programs and platforms, and then being able to return, the hospitality and have folks come on to what it is we're doing. That's what we are about here at Black Power Media. It's no superstars and no bullshit like that. We all in this movement and this liberation struggle together. Although some folks would like to make other moves, good luck with that. You know what I mean? We say that we roll with Africa, and Africa will never lose. You know what I'm saying? There's battles and there's wars, and we will prevail because it's the birthplace of humanity. What you gonna do? That's right. But anyway, let's go ahead and take a little quick Black Power break, and we'll be right back at you on Rise Up Morning Show. Wake on up.
Rise up.
My unconditional solidarity with President Maduro and the government and people of Venezuela, who are currently under attack, savage attack, by the declining world hegemon of the United States. I think it's absolutely necessary to say that coming from that country, and especially looking at the fact that the United States travels the world preening, presenting itself as the guardian of democracy and the rights of the peoples around the world, where the reality is that Africans who are colonized in the United States represent at least half of the largest prison population in the world. There are more Africans in prison in the United States than there are people in Djibouti or in Equatorial Guinea. And so we find it very difficult, also recognizing that by their own estimates, it would take 228 years for the income of Africans colonized in the United States to equal that of the colonial white population. So it is absolutely necessary for me to stand here today before you expressing total opposition to the United States government terroristic actions against the people of Venezuela with an attempt to starve the people into opposition to their government. Mr. President, brothers and sisters, comrades, it is also necessary for us to say that this question of a closer union with Africa, or between Africans, or within Africa, is not a purely academic question, despite the fact that this debate is occurring within the pinnacle of bourgeois academia. That there is a natural, historical inclination for Africa and African people to be united, which is one of the reasons I am here today. The truth of the matter is that this discussion about the unity of Africa, union of Africans, started much earlier than any incursion, as it might be characterized, of China or the Trump administration into Africa. The reality is that Africa came under assault some 600 years ago when Portugal first came and captured African people and initiated the process that would begin capitalism and would establish and consolidate the identity of Europeans in the world. It is a reality that capitalism rests upon a foundation of African slavery. Africans were first capital. And in order for this to occur and to last, it was absolutely necessary to keep African people divided so that we could not resist this horrible incursion on Africa that continues up to now. I think it's important to be able to say that. I think that we have to say that we've seen example after example by African people to unite. We've seen what used to be warring tribes in this geographical terrain that we occupy at this moment, able to achieve a sense of sameness that people refer to as nations, founded on a common economy that came from slavery and colonialism. This is the basis of the unity that we see. If there is a problem with the European Union today, it is because the foundation, the economic foundation of capital, of imperialism, is being stressed by the struggles of the oppressed peoples of the world to take back their resources from this parasite that bleeds Africa, that bleeds the world, that bleeds Afghanistan, that bleeds the people of Yemen who are dying by the thousands even as we have this discussion. This is the basis of a Brexit. It can't stand together anymore because the host is rejecting the parasite. And it's creating crisis throughout Europe and throughout the imperialist world. I think it's necessary, brothers and sisters, to say that there has been a natural trajectory by African people for closer union. We know that we're talking about having this discussion in part because in 1884-85, Europeans sat at a table in Berlin, Germany, not a single African there, and carved up Africa into the territories that we now sometimes call countries and illogically refer to as nations. Africans didn't do that. It was Europe that did that. It was Europe and imperialism that required Africa to be divided so that the resources of Africa, both human and material, could come and pave the streets in London and grow the buildings in Amsterdam and bring clean water to New York, while the streets in Sierra Leone are not paved. And the people in Sierra Leone do not have clean water. And there's no national electric grid there. It is necessary to keep Africa divided by European imperialism and by all the imperialism in order to continue to suck the resources from Africa so that cell phones could exist here, so that Steve Jobs and the others could achieve some great notoriety from the coltan that comes from Congo, where Leopold killed at least 12 to 15 million Africans in order to conquer and keep Africa in the condition it's in today. We talk about a united Africa and African Union because of what European imperialism has done to Africa to keep us divided. We know it's true. We saw 100 years or so ago, Marcus Garvey organized the Universal Negro Improvement Association and African Communities Leagues that stretched across the globe. More than 11 million African people everywhere were connected to this. Africa for Africans, at home and abroad. That was the cry. Not Africans for Nigerians that didn't even exist until the British created it in 1915. And Flora Shaw, the mistress who would become the wife of Frederick Lugard, came up with the name nigger area. Not this false national consciousness that has been imposed on Africans around the world. So that when the Portuguese found shrimp on West Africa and then named it for the Portuguese word for shrimp, Cameroon, it is not true that they are shrimp despite the fact that the people call themselves Cameroonians today. It is a false national consciousness. The false national consciousness that created the American Negro, that created the Black Brit, and the Afro-Swede. We are one Africa, one nation, and we must have closer union. But in order for that to happen, it has to be a revolutionary union. The Organization of African Union, created on May 25th, 1963 in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, was part of an effort to circumvent efforts by Kwame Nkrumah to build a single union of African states. And instead, we come up with an Organization of African Union that codified the colonial borders that were created by Europe in 1884 and 85. We have to be able to break out of this, but it's going to take revolution in order to do this. African revolution in order to do this. African revolution that will destroy imperialism and the world economy that's responsible for the growing immiseration of the masses of people around the world. Uhuru.
Uhuru, Africa for Africans, at home and abroad. Man, welcome back, Ikemba.
Hey, Uhuru.
How you doing,
you mean I'm late?
Nah, you're right on time, man. You right here when you need to be, man.
You haven't started the show yet, so you're still on time. You haven't started yet.
Okay. I didn't miss the guest, did I?
Yeah, you missed him.
You missed the guest for sure.
Man, that's my
Yeah.
comrade, man.
The guest was dope, man. But he gave you props. Don't worry, he gave you props. He said he came with the real deal.
That's what I'm talking about, man.
Said
Tell Kalanji that. Was Kalanji here for it?
Philly stand up. Yeah, Kalanji was here.
Yeah.
Philly stand up. He came with the real deal, no doubt.
He be
Yeah,
sleeping
man.
on me.
But anyway, yeah.
Listen, man. Dude said you come with trash. I said, oh man. That was your folks. He said, man, I don't even know that dude like that. It's all good though.
He said, who?
Yeah.
Oh, man. Nah, don't do me like
Ikele, who is that?
We be in these streets, man.
No doubt, man. Welcome you a little bit early, but you know, we here. It's all good.
No doubt, man.
No doubt. But,
I'm glad y'all put our chairman up there, man.
That's right.
I mean, you know, they was gonna get a hologram, but they figured, you know, Isaac down with the Uhuru movement. So he did a whole 10-minute clip. For the audience, our clips are supposed to be 5 minutes or less. But no, Isaac didn't get that memo. Isaac we're gonna play it for 30 minutes.
That's what's up.
It only gives me a max of 10 minutes, so I figured it'd be the best video to put out there because it's nothing but facts. And to Kalanji's point, yeah, there might be a possibility that I might be joining the party if I can. So,
really? I ain't get that memo. I know I'm absolute now.
I ain't get that memo.
Damn. Okay.
They're not letting you know, man.
Hey, word on the streets that he taking the Kimber's place.
Damn. I messed up that bad, huh? Okay.
Hey, man, listen, man. It's all good. Don't worry. Isaac will keep up the tradition of messing it up. Don't worry about it. He got you.
Hey, hands off Uhuru, man. September 3rd. It's the trial, man.
Yeah. We'll be there. We'll be in Florida for the trial. You know what I mean? Shout out. Yeah. You gonna be there?
Yeah.
Okay. So perhaps you can broadcast.
Why you? Yeah, I'm gonna be down there.
I just asked you, brother. Wait. See, he thought I was trying to crack a joke or something.
Yeah.
Me and Boone are trying to find a budget still, man. But the Paris tickets are looking heavy right now.
Ah, man, don't give false hopes to our brothers. You know we want to do that. Come on.
He said don't give false hope to our brother.
3 weeks from now. But actually, we did, I guess was last month with members of the party who came from London. You know, solidarity rally with not only Chairman Omali, but with the whole movement, because there are 3 of them who will be indicted. Chairman Omali Yeshitela, of course, Penny Hess, and Jesse Neville, 2 white members of the party, members of the white solidarity community with the party, and this is going to be a historic trial. So, you know,
Why Kimber laughing?
Nah, I just want to make sure because they, not members of the party, but solidarity.
Okay, all right. Hey, man, listen, man. I'm listening to the Chairman Boona. I don't know what you...
Go on, Chairman Boona.
Go ahead. Proceed, Chairman Boona.
No, I was saying that it's going to be a very important, trial for African people in general, not only in the US, but in the West in general, because, as our guest, Ismael, has mentioned during the first hour, that Ikemba has missed. He was talking about how the system is trying to co-opt, Black people, or coerce them into being silent when it comes to denouncing the sufferings of our own people, right? So this is the risk that all of us are exposed to, because when you align with the imperial and neo-colonial policies, is where we're living it, you obviously get some reward for that. That's why I have so many Black people who are promoted to top position in the U.S. government. You might even have, Black African female president for the first time in the U.S. But those people will be hurting the interests of African people, not only in the U.S., but also in Africa, in the diaspora in general. Right. So I think that Chairman Omali embodies, that long tradition of African resistance he's been organizing even before Kalandi was born, I guess. And the party was founded in 972. Was it 982, right? Ikamba, you can correct me.
72.
72, sorry. So it's been more than 50 years, you know.
What year were you born, Kalaji?
He was not born.
The chairman was organizing in the 60s, though, with
yeah,
SNCC,
he was also a member of the
Junior.
Black Power movement. So
Yeah.
he was also a member of SNCC, right?
Yeah.
So
I wasn't born then. I was born when the party was started. I was born in 1970. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So I was right when I said that you were not even born when he was started organizing. So
Yeah, the chairman, that was like Isaac said, man, that's what the chairman was talking about there was deep, man. I like the part where he's talking about how, you know, there's certain places like we could see, you know, electricity and water all flowing through these cities in the West, and then, you know, certain spots in Sierra Leone where they're using their resources in order to make it happen in the West, and they don't have running water, etc. And it made me think about what's going on now with the Sahel states and how, you know, with Niger, you know, us here in France, most of our electricity, you know, comes from uranium that they, you know, that they steal from Niger, basically. And so, you know, everything that he was saying then, you know, we can come right back to it right now. You know what I mean? So it's just ongoing. But
and the exploitation of the uranium in Niger has become an environmental catastrophe that the people of Niger will unfortunately never recover from. Because we're talking about, you know, you're talking about tens of tons of millions, you know, tens of millions of tons of radioactive waste, okay, that has been spread in the environment for more than 4 decades, okay. So if you take the region of Arlit, for example, which is a region in Niger which is rich in uranium, those people can't live there anymore. Their water is polluted, their soil is polluted, the air is polluted, and after the mines were closed down, a lot of people, you know, lost their jobs. So it has become an environmental, economic, and political catastrophe. So this is something that we have to be very aware of, and goes back to my point that I was mentioning earlier, the fact that as Africans, we can be co-opted or coerced into remaining silent, you know, in face of the suffering of our own people. Because I don't know how many of the Africans who are living in France, for example, are aware of the impact that the exploitation of the uranium, from which they get their own electricity, the impact is having on the people of Niger. I don't know how many people do actually know that, and how many of them do actually care. Because Chairman has also mentioned something that is very important, which is, you know, Amzad has also mentioned the other day, which is the negative impact of micronationalism. People will only look at the things that are happening in their own neo-colonial boundaries, okay, and not get the global picture. And I think this is one of the strengths of Chairman Omali and his party, is that they've always been connecting the fate of our people in North America, or in America in general, with the fate of African people on the continent and throughout the diaspora. So that's why I think we should pay him, you know, honor. We should honor him whenever it's necessary. Even have a longer video if necessary.
No doubt. 25 minutes?
I can make that 20 minutes. Wouldn't be.
Yeah, StreamYard does give us only 10 minutes. A time limit, but it again, the magnitude, the whole entire from start to finish. And there's actually 56 seconds that I couldn't get in there, where he expands upon, you know, further with Maduro, and the connections that, you know, the imperialist connections that are intrinsically connected to our struggles as Africans. And I've watched that video to this week, probably about, well, because compressing and whatnot, because it's a huge video, it's a gigabyte, and like compressing it. Watched the video probably like 20 times, and each time I learned something new. Each time I think a little bit further at what a true African union would look like, on what a true united front against imperialism would look like, the debuckling of the destabling of these European entities, these economies that are built off the backs of the exploitation of our African brothers and sisters. And so when I look at that video, I feel like we could expand upon it, you know, and I posed the question, you know, to us brothers here, you know, on the panel: what does an African Union look like to you? You know, and in the format of decolonization, in the format of what economy looks like, you know, and maybe this, you know, this we have some time, we got some time on this. So, you know, if we could open up the discussion on that, you know, on the importance of an African Union, but within that importance, what are some terms and conditions that need to be administered, and you know, from individually, because we all have our own approaches to how we see certain things, just for the viewer's sake. You know, so if we could start that conversation off, I'll start off with let's see, who wants to go first?
Kemba.
Real quick, before we break that down, I just want to say that, you know, that's a great one. Let's break it down real quick. But I just want to talk about real quick the importance of understanding, like the importance of that union. I think that sometimes us in the diaspora, you know, we sometimes we get lost because we're in the diaspora. But I think it's important for us to understand that all of us Africans, none of us Africans can be free unless we have a strong, free, united Africa. So that's the reason why, yes, we need to organize locally, but we also have to be understanding the importance of the global, and understanding that our struggle is global, and that if we don't have a strong, united Africa, we in the diaspora will never be liberated. So I think that's key to point out. But
yeah, and you know, when thinking about the union, because we do have an African Union, right? And there are organizations that that work together, you know, outside of the state union. But I think it's important, though. It's a difficult, when we're talking about these unions, it's a difficult thing, because as far as like what that union will look like, it's a difficult thing to describe, because we all, you know, have our ideologies, and we like, you know, hey, we got to be anti-capitalist, we have to be this, you know, anti-colonial, pan-Africanist, and everybody isn't on doesn't align with that, you know, those ideas, but they think that they're working in the interests of African people, right? Do they have a role in this union? And you know, some people would say like, no, you know, like they, you know, these are enemies to, you know, the revolution, right? So I don't know, like I kind of try to understand where some of our people are coming from, because I mean, colonial capitalism has like really infected us. And so we talk about menticide. A lot of our people are dealing with menticide. So, you know, do these people have a part? Can we organize these people to work in the interests, even though they may not agree with socialism, you know, because I consider myself a socialist. I'm anti-capitalist, so I don't care what you call me. Like I'm about collectivism, you know.
Right.
So, you know, but can some of these people, with their skills and their talents and their resources, be organized and work in the interests of destroying capitalism? And so, because what happens is a lot of times that we kind of we don't give space for people who might want to work with us, because, you know, we're so what's the word? Like we're like rigid, you know, we're uncompromising, which we should be, right?
Right.
You know, but can we create spaces for these people? But with all that being said, though, as far as like African Union, and I know I said all of that, but I think like when it does come to the union and who we work with, like the core, it has to be anti-colonial, anti-capitalist though. So even if you may be a capitalist and you're working for, you have bourgeois interests, if you want to support this work that we're doing, you have to know like this is what this union is about, right? You want to bring your skills to help, because some people they may be anti-socialist, socialism, but they're for Black people, and so they may be willing to offer their skills and talents just because of the race thing. Some people, that's just how they think, right? They're just so focused on race and and for everything that's Black. So hey, let's make sure that we can utilize them. But as far as the union, we have to be revolutionary. We have to understand that the system, this global system that we are part of, is a colonial capitalist system, and it's designed to destroy African people. It's designed to oppress, exploit us, and ultimately destroy us when they no longer need us. That was like a long ass answer, but
Nice.
there's a lot. It's not as simple. I ain't gonna lie. It's not, for me, it's not simple.
It's not.
It's a very expansive conversation.
Yeah, it's one thing that we want, but it's like, how do we have to be strategic too? You know what I'm saying? To get to that point where we have this African Union, like the end game, right? This is what we want the union to look like. But getting to that point, what is the organizing going to look like? What strategies are we going to use to create this African Union?
Yeah. To answer Isaac's question, I wanted to quote, maybe I have done it previously in the show, sections of the memorandum that Malcolm X submitted to the Organization of African Unity back in 1964. It was actually supposed to address the assembly of the African Organization of African Union back then, because of U.S. pressure to the newly independent African states, he was not able to do so. So he submitted a memorandum in which he wrote, and I'm going to quote Malcolm X. So he says, since the 22 million of us were originally Africans who are now in America, not by choice, but only by a cruel accident in our history, we strongly believe that African problems are our problems and our problems are African problems. Okay? We also believe that as the heads of the independent African states, we are the shepherds of all African peoples everywhere, whether they are still at home here on the mother continent or have been scattered abroad. Some African leaders at this conference have implied that they have enough problems here on the mother continent without adding the Afro-American problem. With all due respect to your esteemed positions, I must remind all of you that the Good Shepherd will leave 99 sheep who are safe at home to go to the aid of the one who is lost and has fallen into the clutches of the imperialist wolf. I think this is probably one of the most important, I was about to say speeches, but this actual letter that he wrote, because this happened at the moment was when Malcolm X had already left the Nation of Islam, and he was strengthening his international, focus. And he actually even set up an organization that was modeled on the Organization of African Unity, right? I think the name was Organization of Afro-American Unity, which we mentioned with our guest previously. So I think a strong African Union is an organization that is able to pressure the countries where the African members of African diaspora are still living into, defending or at least protecting our rights. Because I think this is something, a policy that all powerful countries have been doing regarding their own diaspora. The reason why you don't have so many Chinese who are dying at the hands of the police in France, in the US, or wherever in the world where there is Chinese diaspora is because they have a powerful state, that will not sacrifice the lives of its own citizens. Okay. And I think that one of the reasons why so many African countries are not, not countries, but heads of state, are not sensitive to our fate, is because, they are working very closely with imperialism. Many of them are neo-colonial leaders whose own position depends on, backing from the West. Okay. I can mention Rwanda, for example, which last year had signed a deal with the UK government, allowing refugees who would be deported from the UK to actually go to Rwanda. Okay, and the government of Rwanda got 125 million pounds for that deal, which they said they're not going to reimburse. Okay, because the new government in the UK that was elected 2 months ago, or even less than that, decided that the deal will not be implemented. Right, so we have heads of states in Africa who are basically doing the neo-colonial job, in complicity with Western powers, despite the fact that I would assume that most African people are anti-colonial. Okay, some of them might not refer to themselves as socialists because socialism has its own history in Africa, and not all African people are really, necessarily nostalgic about socialism, because you have some regimes that call themselves socialists, but actually, have implemented neoliberal and neo-colonial policies. So not all Africans are, willing to refer themselves as socialists. But if you look at the type of policy that they would like to implement, it's actually socialist policy. Okay, so I would say that most of them are anti-colonial, but they have to deal with neo-colonial leaders, who, by the way, are funded by the West. And this will be my conclusion. If you want a strong African Union, it cannot be funded. Like 85% of its budget cannot be funded by Western countries, which is the case now. The main funder of the African Union is the European Union, okay, or international partners who account for 90% of the budget of the African Union. The building of the African Union, Addis Ababa, the new building, was built by the Chinese, and there was a scandal a few years ago because some of the neo-colonial leaders claimed that the building was bugged by the Chinese. But, if the Chinese government gives you a building, what do you expect them to do? They need to do some intelligence, right? They need to collect some data. So this is one of the main weaknesses that we are facing. We have, a lot of people in those countries who have not imagined a way of working that would, allow them to be functioning without the financial backing from the West, or especially the European Union, because if they give you money, they expect something in return, and you cannot accept money from people that you're going to oppose in terms of policies. I think this is one of the main challenges that we have to face. As long as we have those neo-colonial who depend on the West for their own survival, it's going to be very difficult to have a effective African Union, at least institutionally. So what we have to look at now, when can we build an African Union for the people? Okay, right. Despite the fact that we might have neo-colonial states, how are we going to build that solidarity between the people, and transcending the micro nationalism that can be an obstacle to that union between the African people, not only Africa, but also throughout the diaspora. So I'm going to conclude my 20-minute lecture on that.
Now, before we move on, real quick, I just wanted to say that, I think, Ikemba is right when he mentions that, certain people, but I think there's something that's not clicking. There's some that they don't understand when they claim to be for our people, but not anti-capitalist, is that it's actually what the chairman spoke about in the video, which is that, the first capital was our ancestors.
Right.
You know what I mean? So how big is the contradiction there? You know what I'm saying? You have to understand that. You have to go back to studying that, the capitalism is a system that was built, and then it was built on the oppression of our people, man. Straight up. You know what I'm saying? And this is extremely oppressive system, and it's driving the eco side, so yeah, man, on all fronts, it's just aggressive and violent on all fronts. And like you said, as an African people, we're all about community. We have to understand that, so if we think we can be liberated and we can be capitalists at the same time, there's something that's not clicking there.
And I think that it's important that we use our genius wherever we are on the continent and the diaspora to develop systems that are anti-capitalist. Well, not necessarily. I mean, just systems that are conducive to the survival of African people in the collective, like that will empower and enrich the working class, right? The masses of African people, which will be inherently anti-capitalist, but we don't necessarily have to say, okay, let's create the system to go against it. No, let's just create a system that is more conducive to the survival of African people. That's what we need to do. Let's use our genius, and that's what the union has to look like. The unions that we have, like the AU, for instance, is still tied to this system that has been designed, and created by the European. So, we can't have a union that's based on enriching foreign nations.
That's right.
That's based on this capitalist mode of production. That we can't have a union based on that. So I think that's important when we're talking about an African Union.
No, I've been very pessimistic about the African Union, but I just wanted to say very quickly that we also have to give them credit for some of the successful fights that have been carried out on the continent. Especially the decolonization process, especially in Southern Africa, Angola, Mozambique, and also South Africa. In the anti-apartheid fight, the African organization, the African Union back then had played a key role. Okay, so this is something that.
But that wasn't the African Union, though.
Sorry,
that wasn't the African. You talking about the OAU?
Yeah, the OAU, which is the ancestor of the African Union. Yeah, I said the OAU, not the African Union.
Oh, okay.
Because the African Union was officially institutionalized. I guess it was in 2002, right, in Libya. There was a summit back then. But the OAU has played a key role in the decolonization process for countries like Guinea-Bissau, providing, diplomatic international support to those countries that were struggling. And even some members of the African organizing African Union back then, being the so-called frontline states, especially in the fight against apartheid. So there are some positive lessons that we can learn from the organization of the African Union. But fortunately, many of the states are still very dependent on Western domination. So,
and I like the fact that there's an institution that exists. I mean, there's an opportunity for transform and capturing that, if we get the right people in place, because then it means we don't have to reinvent, the wheel. But that's a difficult challenge. But how much more difficult is it to sort of create a new African Union anyway? But I think that there are things that they have in place, and there are policies, like they are trying to empower African people, but it's just how they're doing it, though. They're still just like they're tied. Their relationship is this relationship. There's still these ties to the West that I think needs to be broken down. It's still allowing foreign domination all throughout the continent, man. And so we need an African Union that's going. Part of the policy is, hey, we need control of our resources. Everybody sitting at the table. There's no way that 55 countries can come together and say, hold on, we got to change the terms of this economic relationship with China, with Russia, with the West. But we're dealing with so much internal conflict, it's difficult to do that, right?
Yeah, no. I think you guys hit it all on the nail. Everything I was writing down, y'all, literally. We can move on. We can move on. I seen in the news recently. Well, let's just keep it, relative to Africa. There's a piece that Ikemba sent. So let's go over that. Share the screen. So here, can you guys see that, or do I need to zoom in more?
Yeah. How China's Communist Party is building. Oh, you got your.
Yeah, this
Yeah.
this something I came across. I was just wondering what your guys' thoughts were on it on this. And Bruno, you was talking about this in your 20-minute submission. You kind of touched on it. Mine was just as long, so I don't, I have no room to talk. But I'll just quickly go through some of this, and if y'all had any thoughts, but how China's Communist Party is building political schools and influence in Africa. Beijing's ruling party is also said to have stepped up training of officials on the continent and pushed to promote its development model and ideology. And it goes through this article. China is having an influence too on the shaping of what the political system is going to look like in Kenya. And part of that is building these schools and this training. So I'll read some of Kenya's ruling United Democratic Alliance is the latest African political party to benefit from China's soft power push to promote its development model and ideology on the continent. UDA officials visiting China in May clinched a deal with the Communist Party to build a leadership school for the Kenyan party in Nairobi. Chinese officials had previously held talks about setting up the school when they visited Kenya in March. Beijing has also agreed to finance and build Nairobi's new foreign ministry headquarters as a visible marker of 60 years of diplomatic relations. Korea Singh Oyi, I just made that up, that last year. But Kenya's principal secretary of foreign affairs said in May, many African political parties have approached the Chinese Communist Party to build their schools and help strengthen party buildings, according to Paul Natuya, a China specialist at the National Defense University's Africa Center for Strategic Studies in Washington. He said those parties were from countries including Burundi, the Republic of Congo, Equatorial Guinea, Morocco, and Uganda. So it gets into like resources provided. I'm gonna just go down here to where they talk about some of the concern.
Which paragraph? Tell me when to stop.
Oh yeah, I forgot. right underneath the video where it says the Chinese Communist Party. Do you see that? There's like a video, and underneath that it says, "But despite China's economic growth."
Yeah, right. I got it for you.
Okay, but despite China's economic growth, many Africans are not convinced by the country's political model. Nearly 80% reject one-party rule. Natuya said, yet, as many African scholars argue, China's party and governance training has the potential to entrench single dominant party models in Africa. He noted in the report that the Chinese Communist Party has ongoing relations with 110 African ruling and opposition parties, 35 parliaments, and 59 politically oriented organizations, including party think tanks. He said China had conducted exchanges, party buildings, and training with every African ruling party except for Eswatini, which recognizes Taiwan. But we can stop there. There's a couple of things that really stood out to me. First, China, again, continuously showing its influence on the continent of Africa, and their soft power too that they use. They're throwing their resources around, but it opens the door for continuing China exploitation of Africa, right, and its resources. But also the interesting thing to me is the one party rule. I don't know if I have an issue with that though. But it does depend too on your politics for me. But I think like there, I wish Nkrumah, if Nkrumah didn't get ousted, man, Ghana might be China or Africa might be China today. It might have been the powerhouse that China is if people listen to Nkrumah. But that didn't happen. And I know, like, this is a what if, but it gave way, the ousting of Nkrumah gave way to the infiltration of the West, and capitalist domination of Ghana and the rest of Africa. But I guess, like, I'm wondering your thoughts on that. I feel like, at least in the beginning, sectionalism may come later on, but as we're like moving to bring about this revolution in this political economic system, that we have to all be on the same accord, and we may have to fall under one party. But it's not to say that there's not going to be sectionalism that exists, but we can't. Liberalism is going to make this struggle, I think, a lot more difficult. The struggle against colonial capitalism a lot more difficult. So I don't know if you guys had any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I have some thoughts, and this ties into a lot of what Buna was saying, a lot of what Fernando was saying, a lot of what you were saying, Ikemba. In regards to an African Union, when we mean Africans making sure that they have self-determination over their resources, their economic wealth, the distribution of that, the import, the exports, the control of the ports, all of these that are their key assets to self-determination and sovereignty, those have to be looked at. So when we look at China in the midst of knowing that Africa is exploited by Western powers, they come in and see it as, okay, well, we're not really exploiting you, we're helping you out. But in the context of that, you're not really helping them, because they don't have control over the means of what they can be produced to their communities, that can be produced to the country's economy, and that all has to do with consumption. China has its hands in capitalist values and aesthetics as well. I'm not going to sit here and deny that. I'm not going to sit here and act like they don't. They extract cobalt, they extract uranium, they extract diamonds, they extract everything that the U.S. extracts. Just they try and make it seem like theirs is just a little bit more cleaner. Theirs is a little bit more nicer. And in the context, again, of Africa being able to provide for Africa, for Africans to be able to say and do as they please with what they should, the resources that come from their motherland, that come from the motherland. I just don't see I don't see this suiting African unity. I don't see this. I feel like it creates the divide that we see, which is, China bad, US good, or US bad, China good, and it's like, no, these are all capitalist entities that have their hands in Africa, via the EU, via China, via the military bases that US has, that Russia has, in Africa. All of these things, they all need to be taken out, need to be riddled away. And so, a lot of what relatively what Buna was talking about, he said it has to be rooted in decolonial understanding. And that's really where I'm coming from when it comes to an African Union, and when it comes to even stories like these that like Make Way, where they try and make it seem as positive as possible, but it takes away from even the video of Omali. They're sitting there in a bourgeoisie setting, talking about an African Union, while Africans are being fucking exploited, and continue to be exploited even after that conference and debate was held. So we look at it even now in the context of China, making schools and whatnot, and helping with some type of, and again with U.S. monetary funding. So again, the U.S. dollar is still generated in Africa. It's still something, Umar Gaddafi talked about this. These are things that make Africa the way that they are, which is impoverished, and underdeveloped when they should be the most developed country, the most developed continents. They'd have, all of that should be in the context of when you hear Africa, that's what you used to be. Oh my God, the most developed countries in the world are on the continent of Africa. We don't hear that because they divided it up, like Omali said, called them, certain names, let white women call certain regions, certain white, names and whatnot. And we have what we have today. So, just in the context of that, that's just how I feel. So,
I think that as people who are based in the West, there's something we should be very careful about. It is the anti-Chinese hysteria, okay, that is fed in the press, by politicians, and also in universities. Because what happened is that Africa has been the playground of Western powers for at least, I would say, for the past 600 years, okay? And their hegemony has been challenged by China since at least the past 50 years, okay? When China first under Mao Zedong, then Deng Xiaoping, then others, rose to prominence. You also have to look at the record of China in, Africa in terms of, for example, supporting some liberation struggles in Zimbabwe, for example. That's why China has historically very good relationship with Zimbabwe. Also had close relationship with Julius Nyerere in Tanzania. But they also have a record of, hand in hand with US imperialism, okay? In Southern Africa, for example, where China backed the apartheid, CIA-funded and equipped UNITA of Jonas Savimbi. So they've actually made some, I would say, political blunders, especially in Southern Africa, because they were working in, close relationship with US imperialism, not only in Africa, but globally, because, after the Chinese, Soviet, Sino-Soviet split in the 1970s, China's got even closer to the US, to fight the USSR, which back then was supporting a lot of liberation movements in Africa. But times have changed. China has now become the main rival of Western countries alongside Russia. Obviously, Russia is very obvious right now with the ongoing events in Ukraine. But, I think as soon as the conflict in between Russia and Ukraine is over, they'll be focusing on China. China is their top priority. So I think that we should analyze the relationship between Africa and China, how we can cut better deal with China, basically. Because the Chinese Communist Party, the Chinese state, they are not interested in, human rights in Africa. This is not part of their discourse, okay? The Western countries will impose you, some economic reforms that will devastate not only your economy, also your society. And then they'll come afterwards and teach you lessons about how to uphold human rights in your own country. Which has never happened with China. Okay,
Yeah.
so I think that one of the risks is that we have to look at the positions of not only African heads of states, because they're so smart. I'll never underestimate their intelligence. Those people are very smart. Sometimes they will fake, proximity with China to cut a better deal with the West. Okay, so they're playing on different fields. But what I would say is that there's a huge hysterical propaganda, anti-Chinese propaganda, basically overestimating the influence of China in Africa. For example, when you talk about soft power, Chinese soft power you cannot even compare it to US or France's soft power. Okay, I mean, in terms of students who are getting funding to study in the US, the penetration of US products in Africa, the US military bases is not only soft power, also hard power. There have never been so many military bases of the US in Africa. And despite that, they're talking about Chinese neocolonialism in Africa. Okay? And they want us to co-sign them, when it comes to supporting their propaganda in Africa. So I think I'm always very, careful when I try to talk about the influence of China in Africa, because I know that I am doing it from the perspective of someone who's based in the West, who's being fed with articles that are written by people who are based in the West, despite the fact that they may be Africans. You know, in the article it was interesting. There was quoting an African professor who's teaching in the US. But we've talked about it. Amsad has talked about it last time. Most of them do not even care. They never talk about the US policies in Africa, which is much more devastating than what China is doing. Okay. When was last time that China intervened militarily in Africa? Like what they did in Libya, for example. China opposed the intervention.
Oh, you said China.
Yeah, China opposed the intervention in Libya. It was NATO forces that destroyed Libya. And this is having, disastrous consequences for the whole Sahel. All the terrorism stuff came from the destruction of Libya. So those countries will, to me, they are just resenting Chinese influence because China is now on their so-called playground, and this is something that they're trying to brainwash us, both people in the diaspora and also some of their puppets in Africa, to repeat their anti-Chinese propaganda, which doesn't mean that there are not issues with China. I've talked about their involvement in co-signing CIA funded, and supported guerrillas. We'll even say terrorist organization in Africa, and also in terms of economic exploitation, like Isaac said, we have to defend our own, economic resources. So I think we have to strike a right balance between, holding China accountable for its policies in Africa, but this is our own responsibility. We have to defend our interests first, and I think the people of Africa are aware of their own interests. Okay, they're not going to rely only on the heads of state. So we have to defend our own interests when it comes to China, Russia, India, the so-called BRICS, and at the same time avoid falling into the trap of Western propaganda. Because at the end of the day, I don't know how many people in this, among us know about Chinese history or Chinese language or Chinese society. We're much more familiar with the Western societies. So actually, we do not get the chance to know what is, the point of view of the Chinese themselves. Not only China as a government, but also as one of the most influential, dynamic civilizations in human history. So that was my half-an-hour lecture on China.
Now, real quick, I just wanted to say to your point, Buna, I think you're right when you speak about, we have to be very careful when we're in the West, with the propaganda that's coming, because we know what type of machine that is, right? The propaganda machine that comes out of the West is heavy, and it's one of their most important tools that's linked to our oppression, because we already spoke about the mental side, etc., right? But then also, I think a lot of people can fall into the opposite, which is that a lot of people in the West tend to fall into this space where, like, they don't view or acknowledge any type of oppression that doesn't come out of the West. Like, they feel like it doesn't exist. It's only the West, and that's it. And any oppression that comes out of anywhere else, they don't view, they don't speak on, they don't legitimize. So I think that's also a mistake, in my opinion. I would say, like Dr. John Henry Clark said, we have to remember that we have no friends as Africans. And that's it. That's how I feel about it.
Oh, my. You have allies,
We have to be careful.
Like, it's always funny because this is probably one of the most quoted sentence from Dr. Henry Clark. I hear it like every month or even every week. People saying that we have no friends. But if you look at the history of Africa, especially I would think the 20th century, okay, maybe we might not have some friends, as you say. And
we have allies, but we have no friends.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't really know the context of that quote. I hear it very often. But if you look at the liberation struggle, we got a lot of support from countries like Algeria, okay, from China, like I mentioned, from the USSR, of course, and also Cuba.
Those are allies.
South Africa,
those are allies. They know what they're doing. They have their interests too. They're not doing it because they're our friends.
They're not doing it because they're friends. They're doing it because they have economical interests that value their economical system and political and political obligations.
I don't know what the economic interest of Algerian government was when they welcomed a delegation of the Black Panther Party, which had its international headquarters in Algeria. I don't know what
Well, we're not going to have a
say
full-blown
it.
argument
Yeah.
on this, but it's
Yeah, we're not
political
gonna-
interest.
Yeah.
It's political
I mean,
interest, though.
It's political interest.
I don't know the interests of but that interest has to be materialized. I mean, if you say political interest, like you have to tell me something why they did that. I mean, for me it's not obvious. Like, for example, when the Cuban, they said more than 400,000 people within 15 years in Angola, which as Nelson Mandela, and not only Nelson Mandela, but many South African, Namibian freedom fighters acknowledge that without Cuba, their countries would not be independent. I'm wondering what type of political, economic interest that
Political interests is that they are opposing the system that exploits the whole entire continent. So when you are aligning yourselves with with powers that don't align with U.S. imperialist powers, that's an ally. That's not a friend. That's an ally, because they have political, economical interests. They work in reciprocity with each other, because if I'm not mistaken, most of these individual countries are sanctioned by the same U.S. Imperialist mode that makes it impossible for their economy to run the way that it should, or even for the country to run in self-determination as it should in totality. So that's why that quote for me, it resonates, because again, we have individuals that aren't African, that are, that come and they have their own interests, and then they get labeled as friends, and then we again get blurred into this idea that they're a friend when really they're an ally, because they have interests. If the motherland wasn't a gold mine, a diamond mine, a coal mine, a cobalt, uranium, coltane, titanium, all the majority of the minerals that make cell phones, that make computers, that makes money, monetary funding, that's why they're allies. So that's why I as said. So
But we don't want friends anyway, right? We want comrades.
exactly.
We want comrades, man.
The reason why I'm uncomfortable with the term friend is that, even that expression that we have no friends, is that there's one of the, I'm not saying that this is something that people in this, collective are assuming, but one of the underlying assumptions is that some of us, or our people, is so naive that it can be tricked into believing that those who are actually benefiting or trying to take advantage of us are actually our friends. Okay, I don't know if you guys got my point.
Well, at some point, some of us were obviously naive. If not, we wouldn't be where we're at today.
No, I think
he's saying he's saying that we misinterpreted what he was saying, but I don't know.
I'm saying that we might have misinterpreted what John Henry Clark meant when he said.
Well, I could pull the clip up. The clip's not too far away.
Yeah, I can tell you what I meant. We
would need a whole show to break it down,
But I can tell you what I meant. Okay, what the Dr. Henry Clark maybe meant something else. What I meant was exactly what I said before. Forget about the quote, okay? What I said was that I agree with you. We have to be careful with the Western propaganda machine. But also, many people want to completely deny that there's any oppression coming from anywhere else that's not the West. And we as Africans, hold on, let me finish. And we as Africans, if we look anywhere on the globe, on the four corners, we're at the bottom of the pile. No matter where you look right now, whether it's on the continent, in so-called socialist countries, in wherever you look at, four corners of the world, we're at the bottom of the pile, African people, right? So that was my point, right? So that was my point. That's it.
The question I was asked is that as people who have been unsuccessful, okay, in fighting the imperialism in the countries where we are living, what kind of model or example we can give to our brothers and sisters in Africa? Okay, so if you go to Africa, for example, that's why I always, try to look at what the Africans in Africa, the people, not only the leaders, think about countries like China and Russia, because the type of comments that we get from there is usually very different from what we hear from our own, including our own organizations in the West. So if we are unsuccessful in fighting the imperial policies that are implemented by the countries where we're living in Africa, they can kill our leaders, they can destroy our economies, the environment, and we are totally. I'm not saying that we are not fighting. We have been fighting actually. Our ancestors, at least our ancestors, have been fighting. If I say that we are fighting, people might think that I am, exaggerating my own role. So I'm not speaking for myself. But we have to acknowledge that even with some of our allies, or not say our friends or our so-called friends of the left, as Dr. Joe would say, we have been unsuccessful in having any significant impact on the neo-colonial and imperial the countries where we are living on Africa. So what kind of legitimacy would have to go to Africa and tell them you guys shouldn't ally with Russia or China because they are also oppressors? I mean, I'm not like I do not ignore the impact of the policies that China has. I've talked about the fact that China has been allied with the CIA. Okay,
Yeah.
so I'm not like a China apologist. They have been allied with the CIA.
Well, then better.
But I agree with you. I'm not saying we should do
look at-
that. I'm not saying we should go there and tell them don't align. I'm just saying we always have to be careful.
But
Keep
you
both eyes open.
You know that-
eyes up, fist clenched. That's all I'm saying.
Let's look at it through this lens. If they were really friends of African countries that are colonized by Western powers,
Yeah,
then
I'm not
they
saying they
would-
are friends.
they-
By the way,
you-
I
no,
agree
no,
with
no,
you
no, no,
on
no, no.
that
Don't
part.
get me. No, don't get me wrong. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying let's just, for an example, if they were really quote unquote friends or comrades, they would inflict or be more of a forceful they would be more forceful. They're not. They work in reciprocity to align themselves the same way that the US does, where they weasel their way in through, okay, well, we can build you a school. We don't need a school under the conforms of neo-colonialism. We need to be liberated. So what are you going to do to liberate us? That's like why when I look at anything that any other country that's out there, or any other continent that's out there that's imposing, their economy on the African people, i.e., for example, France. We just spoke about that. 30% of their energy, your guys' energy comes from Niger.
That's right.
So we're looking. I'm looking at it through a lens of when Africans have complete control. Then we can have the conversation on who's a friend and who's an ally, but in the context of this capitalist imperial mode, everybody is an ally to Africa because they have their own interests, their own political, their own resource interests, their own monetary interests. All of that there's an interest. The root of it all is that they have interests in Africa, and the interest always comes at the devaluation of African people. And so I feel like we're all in agreement when we come to that, maybe on some areas, but we have less than 10 minutes to conclude. Did you I'd like to, if we can, go over what just recently happened with Cori Bush, as Buna sent a link in for us to discuss this. If you can, Buna, break this down for us in brief. I have here, I'm going to send you the link that I have in the chat.
Yeah.
Let me see
Yeah,
right
put in the
here.
chat.
Copy. Yeah. No, I actually lied to everybody right now.
All
I
right.
found this article, but you had mentioned in the private chat we should talk about Cori Bush. And so I just dropped it in the link in there for you to be able to follow along. I'm gonna share the screen. Stop sharing. Here.
Fernando, we need a separate debate on the impact of China in Africa.
Okay.
I feel like it's a needed discussion. I feel like there's a
No,
lot
it is
that
a needed
maybe
discussion, man.
we could
gotta talk about.
break.
And by the way, you can, but man, we waited for your take on that, man. You was kind of quiet down there.
No,
Brother.
he's sitting back like
He's the
Michael
one who wrote
Jackson.
the article, by the
Popcorn
way.
thriller.
He was like, "Let them brothers go to church."
All
Bro,
right.
I got so Machiavellian. I was like, hold on, let me back about it.
All right,
Um,
tell me.
so yeah.
Tell me when you're.
Yeah, very quickly. I mean, I think most of our viewers are aware of the, what happened in the primary of the Democratic Party in Missouri, where one of the most progressive quote unquote members of the U.S. Black Congress woman has been defeated once again because she had decided to call a spade a spade. She has been denouncing for months now genocide in Gaza. Okay, sharing the same fate as Jamal Bowman, which we have discussed, I guess was 2 weeks ago, was also defeated because the Zionist lobby has targeted them as enemies. Okay, because those are independent, black, at least in thinking and in speeches, Black Congress men and women who have, decided to denounce the criminal genocidal policies of the European settler colonial state named Israel in Palestine. So once again, the Zionist lobby has spent millions. They spent more than 40 million in the case of Jamal Bowman, and in the case of Cory Bush, they spent, I think, over 9 million. So Jamal Bowman's defeat was the most expensive primary in the history of the U.S. So this is also another, message that is sent to those among our brothers and sisters who say that what's happening in Palestine is not relevant to them. So this is the continuation of the long tradition of Zionist attacks against Black freedom struggle. So hopefully it will be a wake-up call for those of us who are still ignoring the impact of the pro-Israel lobbies having on our own struggle. So I think we should do our best to confront the I was about to say the enemy, or at least the political opponent, this elephant in the room that we cannot ignore anymore. So that was my take on Cory. It's a huge setback for us as Black people. So
No, it's very, very huge, but it's also a huge example to show you how much power is not real has over the government system here, that it imposes its Zionist genocidal evil tendencies, that then in part create the funding that gets sent to them to drop 2,000-pound bombs on Palestinians. And so it's again, there was a video that I seen, and she said that she's going to make it her mission to go to aim. Her next mission is to aim directly at AIPAC, and whatnot. So again, one of people say, quote unquote, one of these progressive individuals that was in the primaries and has been around. And so for me, I just look at it as it's these things are going to happen because again, we're seeing the mass decline and the mass uphill climb that is Christo-fascism. So they're aligning themselves up to inevitably do what they've set out to do since Obama laid out the blueprints for the Heritage Foundations, which then gave way for J.D. Vance to write portions of this Project 2025, and then it be funded by Trump. So we're in the wake of that, and I think what we've done a little bit too much of is try to understand the situation rather than we've been reactive rather than proactive to the situation, which is a problem. And it's a problem that I think yesterday one of our guests talked about Africa Jr. It talked about that. He talked about the united front against fascism, as Drew bin Wahad is calling for, it's long overdue. And so what comes with long overdue? Long stayed amounts of not understanding, needing to re-understand some stuff. So it's a long uphill battle. And I think we're in a position now where need not to focus on these bureaucratic losses that in part help aid the same system that oppresses our people, but then work like how we are here in reciprocity with each other. So I see that we're pressed for time. Is there any announcements that you guys wanted to put out there before we go? We have about 2 minutes, about 4 minutes, I should say.
I would just say that we have brothers and sisters who are politicians. What are you still doing in the Democratic plantation? So this is the question.
Good question.
Maybe we should bring one of them to explain. Maybe we should bring one of them to explain. Actually,
we should. No, I think we should.
I'm playing. I don't think we have any of them watching Black Power Media, but yeah,
but we can bring them. I mean, we can send an invitation to Jamal Bowen or
that's true.
Corey Bush. Well, people who we deeply respect. I deeply respect them, but at some point, and I'm probably saying this because U.S. citizen. I'm not blaming the U.S., but I'm trying to figure out why they're still staying in that plantation of the Democratic Party, despite all the things that they, witnessing from within.
They getting paid. So anyway, no doubt. We appreciate y'all. Make sure you tune in. Make sure you have a great weekend, and tune in on Tuesday. We'll be right back on Tuesday.
Wait, Ikemba wanted to say something. 5 seconds.
Yeah, Ikemba's closing.
Hey, now, just in the spirit of Black August, visit curvefest.com, Curvefest for political prisoners, and see how you can get involved and support our political prisoners and in that movement.
Yeah. No doubt.
Yeah, no, please, everybody. I'll be probably live on Saturday on my own network. But the biggest thing is I just want everybody to support fedupforpalestine.co/Gaza. Very, very good work that we're doing. Finally starting to get back into the groove of things after having to address some stuff privately and openly. But yeah, I really do appreciate everybody who watched. We will see you guys on a Tuesday. We're going to take you out with our sister Sunny.
Sometimes the riot is a quiet one. Well, the battle is to love yourself and function in society where voices of reason are muted by anxiety, like gaining notoriety is selling your soul. So we tend to go no deeper than the shallow water level, trying to keep us overhead in the face of all the slurs and the stares, mentally frozen, paralyzed by fear of failure and success. So we lock, stock, barrel, running while it's crumbling. All these towers and they're babbling, but the baby's in the bath and a stash under the bed. On my head, spinning from the circles and the puppets and the strings that they pull. Then we move. Reactionary warfare never produces when it's on the field. Feeble and foolish. What tools and what weapons are we using? We need some new ones. Real revolution. It's real solutions. Well, we've taken on the ways of the ones who conquer with their guns and religion and division. Got my inner me looking like my enemy. Real revolution. Well, my inner me, really a mirror for the galaxy. New time, brand new paradigms, new contracts to sign. They thought that this would all be televised, though it's happening right before our very eyes. It's on the inside, with their guns cocked. When that rock drops, standing on the rooftop, praying that the mountaintop can live in